Now, what priority should be given to sending an ambulance to a person who's had a stroke? Now, at the moment, it's an amber priority, which means there's no time target. But our reporter, Bethan James, has been to visit a family from Flintshire who say the NHS failed their mother when she was taken ill.
A gathering to remember. Friends and family meet on a mountaintop in North East Wales to celebrate the life of Sue Newell in a spot that she loved.
She was the type of person that was always putting others first and loved her role as a nurse and extremely caring and compassionate.
Sue Newell died of a stroke aged 68. Her family believe the health service failed her.
It wouldn't make it right for anybody not to have the right help, but for a nurse that knew exactly what she needed not to get the help, it's just tragic, I think.
Sue's daughter Anna was with her mother on the night she first collapsed at their family home last year. Both a paramedic and a local GP believed she'd had a stroke and that she needed an ambulance to take her to hospital. On this occasion, Sue waited lying on a kitchen floor for nearly 11 hours, and then a further 2.5 hours in an ambulance queue outside Ysbyty Maelor.
In those hours that went by, we were ringing and ringing 999, absolutely desperate to know what help was coming. I knew that there was a window, if it was a stroke, that my mum could be treated with thrombolysis, which is a clot-busting drug.
6 months later, Sue had a severe stroke. Again, the family called for an ambulance, and again the response was too slow. This time, she never recovered.
You might think this is one of those stories you've heard before, of someone slipping through the cracks of an overstretched health service. But in fact, this is the system working as it was designed, because believe it or not, strokes are not a top priority call-out for the ambulance service.
In 2015, a traffic light system was introduced. Red for immediately life-threatening calls with an 8-minute response time target. Amber for patients with serious conditions but with no time target. And green for non-serious calls. Controversially, strokes are included in the amber category with no time target.
I believe very strongly that this case illustrates why we need a time target for those amber 1 calls, because those are calls where the length of time it takes from a person to be collected to when they get treatment is actually likely to make a difference to their outcome. The family are right to be disappointed.
The Stroke Association doesn't think that strokes need to be recategorised as red, but they do think there needs to be a target to make sure stroke patients are treated within 3 hours.
It's a whole pathway target that we are looking at, and it's something that we would strongly recommend so that we have something to measure against. And that's the only way that we can ensure that improvements are made and that targets are being met and that stroke patients are receiving the best care possible.
The ambulance service accepts that they got things wrong in Sue's case, but the system, they say, is essentially the right one.
The experience that Sue and her family had when they called for an ambulance back in 2017 was one that we regret, and we're sorry for the length of time that the response took. We're of the view that the prioritisation system we operate is the right way to prioritise and triage emergency calls. Indeed, it's similar with other ambulance services across the UK and internationally. The challenge for us on that particular day was one of resourcing and having the right amount of resource in the right place at the right time.
Not surprising, it is all about resources. But the ambulance service say, what can they do when their ambulances are tied up outside hospitals waiting to discharge patients? These are all questions for the Welsh Government.
We are told again and again by the Welsh Government that they are taking this all-systems approach. I can't see it. I get dozens of cases like this, not as serious as this, but cases where people are waiting for a long time outside hospitals in ambulance brought to me. We can never know, of course, whether if this lady had been admitted to hospital in a more timely fashion, she might have lived. But what we do know is that this is unacceptable, and the government has got to admit to it and start setting some meaningful targets to get it changed.
Unfortunately, the Health Secretary Vaughan Gethin wasn't willing to be interviewed, but in a statement, a Welsh Government spokesperson said The recent Amber Review advised against introducing new time-based targets for conditions like strokes. And what about the issue of ambulances queuing outside hospitals? Well, again, in a statement, a Welsh Government spokesperson said that patients must be handed over from ambulances to hospital teams quickly. Health boards, he said, are responsible for ensuring that this happens.
But this isn't about the individual parts of the health service. It's about a system, one that Sue's family believe gave her no chance. The family was so worried about the time it took for an ambulance to get to their village, they raised money to install this defibrillator. But a better memorial, they think, is for policy to change.
The policy to hold patients like animals outside the hospital with no idea of what's happening to them, it's just totally, utterly unacceptable. I am absolutely desperate that we see some change so that my mum's life is not wasted, that things can be better for those people living in Wales.
Ambulances outside Ysbyty Maelor in Wrexham, where Sue died. On the side of them you can see a sign on how to recognise a stroke and the importance of swift action. What it doesn't say is that if you have a stroke and someone calls for an ambulance, it just might not come.
Bethan James reporting there. Now, we've had a statement from Betty Cadwaladr, the Health Board, which includes those hospitals, Ysbyty Maelor in Wrexham, about long ambulance queues outside hospitals. And it says we continue to work with our colleagues at the Welsh Ambulance Service to reduce handover delays outside hospitals. The timely handover of patients from ambulances are among our biggest priorities.